Welcome back to the deep dive. We are looking at a number today that's a bit of a reality check for anyone paying attention to the tech world. 1 in 6.
1 in 6. As of the second half of 2025, that's roughly 16% of the global population now actively using generative AI.
Which, on the surface, sounds incredible.
Oh, it is. I mean, if you think about adoption curves for, the internet or smartphones, getting to 1 in 6 this fast it's historically unprecedented. We've gone from what is this magic trick to a daily utility in record time.
Right, but that global average, that big shiny number, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting, isn't it? It feels like it's masking a pretty serious crack in the foundation.
It is. We're digging into the H2 2025 Microsoft AI Diffusion Report from the AI Economy Institute today. And the real headline isn't the adoption rate itself, it's the distribution. The report calls it a widening digital divide.
And that word widening, that's the key.
That's the whole story right there.
Yes, because that feels counterintuitive. You assume tech starts exclusive, like those old brick-sized mobile phones, and then gets cheaper, more available. The gap is supposed to shrink. You're saying this report shows the opposite is happening.
For now, yes. The gap is actively getting bigger.
Yeah.
If you look at the data, the global north, so wealthy, developed economies, their adoption grew nearly twice as fast as the global south.
Twice as fast.
And the gap between them actually widened from 9.8 percentage points in the first half of the year to 10.6 percentage points in the second half.
So it's the rich get richer phenomenon, but for what? Cognitive tools?
Essentially, the momentum is concentrating. And here's the kicker. Every single country in the top 10 for adoption growth is a high-income economy. The infrastructure, the literacy, the access, it's all compounding in the same places.
But, and this is why we're digging in today, the countries actually leading the charge aren't necessarily the ones you'd think. I mean, most people listening would probably guess the United States is number one.
Of course.
We've got the chips, the data centers, the hyperscalers. We are the engine room.
And that is exactly what the report calls the infrastructure trap, which we should definitely get to in a bit.
Right.
But to answer your question, no. The U.S. is not number one.
Oh, okay.
It's not even in the top 20.
That is wild. So who is it? Who's at the top of the mountain?
The undisputed leader, with a massive 64% adoption rate, is the United Arab Emirates.
64%. So nearly 2/3 of the working population there is using Gen AI. That seems impossibly high compared to the global average.
It's staggering.
Is this just a case of a wealthy nation throwing money at it, buying their way to the top of the leaderboard?
Well, capital obviously helps.
Yeah.
But you can't buy adoption. You can buy access, you can give everyone a login, but you can't make them use it in their daily work.
Right.
The UAE's success is actually a policy lesson. They started treating AI as a public utility like water or electricity years before the tech was even ready for prime time.
So you mean they started this before ChatGPT?
Way before. In October 2017, they appointed the world's first ever Minister of State for Artificial Intelligence.
Wow, 2017.
They set up a national strategy for it. So when the generative wave actually hit, they weren't scrambling. They weren't trying to figure out what this thing was. They were waiting for it. They had the pipes laid. They just needed to turn on the water.
That level of foresight just creates a totally different environment for the average person, doesn't it?
It creates the single most valuable currency in the AI economy, which is trust. The report cites the 2025 Edelman Trust Barometer. In the UAE, public trust in AI is sitting at around 67%.
67. Okay, and for context, where does a country like the U.S. sit on that scale?
32%.
That's a 35-point gap. That is a staggering difference.
It's the difference between viewing a tool as a partner in national progress versus viewing it as a threat to your job. And the UAE government actively fostered that trust with things like regulatory sandboxes.
Okay, let's unpack that for anyone not in policy. What's a regulatory sandbox?
Think of it like a safe zone for testing. If you're a company, you can deploy new AI tech in a controlled environment without, the full weight of the law coming down on you immediately. It signals to the market, come here, build cool stuff, and we'll protect you while you figure it out.
And they combine that with things like golden visas for talent, right?
Exactly. They made it incredibly easy for the best and brightest to move to Dubai or Abu Dhabi. So you've got the talent, the regulatory safety net, and a population that trusts the government's direction. That's the recipe for 64% adoption.
So, lesson 1 from the report. Adoption follows trust, not just raw infrastructure.
Precisely. Now, if the UAE is the story of top-down strategy, our second big success story is all about bottom-up culture,
Yeah.
and that is South Korea.
Right. The report calls them the mover of the year.
They jumped 7 spots in the global rankings from 25th to 18th.
Yeah.
But it's their growth rate that's the real story. It's up over 80% since late 2024. I mean, they are sprinting while almost everyone else is just jogging.
I read the notes on this, and it feels like a perfect storm of technical ability finally meeting a real cultural demand.
The technical part is so crucial. We have to talk about the CSAT benchmark to understand why their adoption was so low before. The CSAT is the Korean College Entrance Exam.
Which is famously, notoriously difficult. I've heard they stop planes from flying over during the listening portion.
It is brutal.
Yeah.
And when they tested the old GPT 3.5 on the Korean CSAT, it scored a 16 out of 100.
16. Functionally illiterate.
It was worse than that. It was just hallucinating. It didn't get the nuance, the honorifics, the logic of the language. So for a Korean student or a business professional, AI was a useless toy.
So adoption was flat because the product was just broken for that market.
Exactly. Then comes GPT 4.0 and eventually GPT 5. The score hits 100, a perfect score.
So the tool finally became fluent.
It crossed the utility threshold. Suddenly it works. But, and this is the key insight, just because a tool works doesn't mean people will use it. You need a spark.
And this is where the anime comes in.
Yes. In April 2025, South Korea saw this massive viral trend with Ghibli-style avatars.
Oh, I remember seeing this everywhere. People turning their profile pics into these beautiful, stylized anime characters.
It sounds totally trivial, right? A fad. But the report identifies this as the gateway drug. It required no coding, no prompt engineering. You just uploaded a photo. It completely broke the intimidation barrier.
So people came for the fun anime picture, realized the tool was actually easy to use, and then thought, wait a minute, can this thing also write my email?
That's it exactly. They came for the fun, they stayed for the utility. That viral moment demystified the tech for millions of people almost overnight. And once usage spiked, then the government stepped in with the AI Basic Act to support it.
It's so interesting that the government there didn't start the wave, they just learned how to surf it.
A perfect way to put it. That's the South Korean model. High technical readiness, a culture that moves incredibly fast, and a government that's smart enough to get behind momentum when it sees it.
Okay, so we have the UAE with the long strategic game and South Korea with the sudden cultural pivot. But the report highlights a third player. And this one seems to complicate that digital divide narrative we started with.
It really does. It challenges the whole idea that the global north is the only one driving the bus. We have to talk about DeepSeek.
This is, I think, the most disruptive finding in the whole report.
Absolutely. DeepSeek is open source, it's Chinese-owned, and it is incredibly aggressive.
And we usually compare models on, performance benchmarks. Is it smarter than GPT-4? But this report focuses on where it's winning.
And that's what matters. So yeah, DeepSeek has 89% market share in China, which you'd expect. But look at the secondary markets. Russia, Iran, Cuba, Belarus.
The sanctioned bloc.
The countries that are restricted from accessing U.S. tech. But it goes way beyond politics. The report highlights Africa. DeepSeek usage in Africa is estimated to be 2 to 4 times higher than in other regions.
2 to 4 times higher. That is huge.
Yeah.
Why is it winning there? What's the secret?
It's a very simple non-political reason. Friction. Specifically, financial friction.
You mean cost.
Cost and payment infrastructure. DeepSeek's chatbot is free, but crucially, it does not require a credit card to sign up.
That no credit card detail is so easy to overlook if you live in New York or London. We're just used to subscriptions for everything.
It is the single biggest barrier to entry for what people call the bottom billion. Even if someone in, say, Nigeria or Kenya has the $20 for a ChatGPT subscription, they might not have a credit card that processes international recurring payments. DeepSeek just removed that barrier entirely.
And the report also mentions they're kind of piggybacking on hardware, too.
Right. They have strategic partnerships with Chinese firms like Huawei, who provide the telecom backbone for a huge chunk of Africa and Latin America. So DeepSeek is coming pre-bundled or heavily promoted on the networks people are already using every day.
This suggests we're not just seeing a divide in how much AI is being used, but which AI is being used.
That is the critical insight here. We're seeing a bifurcation. If you're in the global north, the US, Europe, Japan, you are almost certainly using closed proprietary models from OpenAI, Google, Anthropic. You're in the Western stack.
And if you're in much of the global south, you're increasingly adopting this open stack built around DeepSeek.
We could be drifting toward two completely distinct AI internets. And these models, you have to remember, have different training data. They have different safety filters. They have different, for lack of a better word, worldviews baked into their code.
That raises a massive question about interoperability down the line.
It absolutely does. What happens when a business in New York tries to integrate with a supply chain partner in Lagos, and their base-level AI systems have fundamentally different logic? That friction is going to be very, very real.
Which brings us back, finally, to the originator of that Western stack, the United States. You mentioned earlier we aren't even in the top 20. We actually fell a spot, right? From 23rd to 24th.
24th, with an adoption rate of just 28.3%.
How is that even possible? We are the factory. We build the models. We have the biggest tech companies in history right here.
Well, being the factory doesn't mean you're the best customer. The report calls this the infrastructure trap. The U.S. leads the world in innovation building, the next frontier model, designing the new chip. But it lags in diffusion, getting the average person to actually use these things productively.
Is that just the trust issue? Again, that 32% number?
Trust is a huge part of it. That number is abysmal. But it's also about fragmentation.
What do you mean by fragmentation?
In the UAE, you have a minister of AI setting a clear national direction. In South Korea, you have this huge cultural wave. In the U.S., adoption is left entirely to the private sector. There is no cohesive national strategy.
It's every company for itself.
Exactly. And the regulatory environment is, well, let's just call it uncertain. Different states are passing different laws. There are huge federal debates about copyright and safety. It just creates hesitation.
So companies are just waiting to see how the dust settles before they go all in.
And individuals are hesitant because the narrative here has been so dominated by fear. Fear of job loss, fear of deep fakes. The narrative in the UAE and South Korea has been about empowerment and utility. It's a totally different mindset.
It really is the innovator's dilemma on a national scale. We're so busy building the next thing, we haven't figured out how to properly integrate the current thing into our own society.
Precisely. You can invent the light bulb, but if you don't wire the houses and convince people it's safe to flip the switch, your own citizens are still sitting in the dark while you export the bulbs to everyone else.
So, to synthesize all this for everyone listening, if you really want to understand who's winning in the AI era, you can't just look at who has the most GPUs. You have to look at the deployment model. And we're seeing three very different playbooks emerge.
That's right. Playbook 1 is the UAE model. Strategic, government-led, long-term planning. All about building trust.
Playbook 2 is South Korea.
The cultural sprinter. Solve the language problem first, then ride a viral wave to mass adoption. All about speed and resonance.
And Playbook 3 is DeepSeek.
Radical accessibility. Remove every economic and technical barrier to capture the markets the giants are ignoring. It's all about scale and low friction.
It leaves us with a really provocative thought for the future. We always talk about the digital divide as a gap between people who have tech and people who don't. But this report suggests the real divide might become one between two completely different AI ecosystems.
That's the shadow trend, isn't it? The global north is locking into these high-cost, high-capability, closed systems. And much of the global south is building on low-cost, open-source, accessible systems.
And historically, open and accessible tends to win on scale.
It does. I mean, the internet itself won because it was open. If the next billion users learn to think with AI using a system like DeepSeek, the entire center of gravity for AI could shift away from Silicon Valley much faster than anyone realizes.
A geopolitical split right down to the code itself. That is definitely something to chew on. We're going to leave it there for this deep dive. The full rankings from the report are linked in the show notes if you want to see where your country lands.
It's a sobering read, but a really important one.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next deep dive. Stay curious.